Hello learners, we've been discussing about past decided cases, and in this video we will be discussing about Cui Borex versus Bolivia. This is a case that was decided in the year 2015. So in this case we see that the claimant was Cui Borex, and Cui Borex had invested in Bolivia through a company called Non-Metallic Minerals, that was a Bolivian company, and Cui Borex held 50.995 percentage of shares in this company. So Cui Borex is generally involved in the business of ulexite, which is a non-metallic mineral, and and also in manufacturing products that were derived from ulexite, including boric acid. So basically, Cui Borex was owned by Fosk family. So Alan Fosk owned 0.005 percentage of shares in NMM, which is Non-Metallic Minerals Company, the Bolivian company, the investment vehicle of Cui Borex. So 50.995 percentage of shares was with Cui Borex and 0.005 shares was with Alan Fosk. So basically 51% shares in total was with either with Cui Borex or Alan Fosk, who was the owner of Cui Borex. So they were the majority shareholders. Now, what was the investment in Bolivia? In Bolivia, you all know the largest dry salt lake, Salar de Uyuni, is situated in the region of Potosi, and since 1965, this region was protected and a fiscal reserve was denoted. And if at all a mining activity has to happen within the area of this fiscal reserve, then a special authorization by a special legal provision under Bolivian Mining Code has to be taken. Only then the mining activity can happen. So this was the case from 1965 until 1988. So what happened in 1988? A law was passed. It's called Ley Walda. So this Ley Walda, a Bolivian law was passed, which sort of redefined the parameters of the fiscal reserve, and then now 43 concessions were granted after the redefinition. So now what had happened was 43 concessions were granted in those areas which were earlier considered to be part of fiscal reserve. So new 43 concessions were granted, and 7 of these concessions were granted to a Bolivian company called RIGSA, RIGSSA. So RIGSA, if you see, was owned by 2 Bolivian nationals. That is, it was owned by Moscosco and Ugalde, so 2 individuals, and these 2 individuals were retired government officials from the Ministry of Mines. So these 2 individuals prepared a business proposal and approached Cui Borex, and then they get into a business arrangement. So Cui Borex signs a contract with RIGSA for an exclusive supply contract, and it also gets the right of first refusal in case if RIGSA wants to sell these concessions. Later on, we see that Cui Borex establishes non-metallic minerals, and then RIGSA gives these 7 concessions to non-metallic minerals company in return for certain shareholding. After the, if we look at this arrangement, after RIGSA gave its 7 concession, it becomes a majority shareholder. Then there was some transfer of shares that happened between RIGSA, Moscoso and Cui Borex. So eventually the final shareholding pattern that we see at the time of this dispute was 50.995% of the shares in NMM was with Cui Borex, 0.005% was with Alan Fosk, and then the rest of the shares were with Moscoso. Concessions were with NMM. So now this was the arrangement. Now what happened was, when these 43 concessions were granted, local people started protesting against these granting of these concessions. Even Potosi representatives prepared and submitted a bill wanting to reverse the Ley Walda, the legislation, the law which sort of redefined the parameters of Salar de Uyuni, the fiscal reserve area, and all of that. So that was happening. So initially when that was happening, So there was one other decree that was passed, Law 2564. And what did Law 2564 do was it abrogated Le Valda, and then it redefined the parameters of fiscal reserve of Salar de Uyuni, and it also conferred an executive power on certain officials to conduct audits on all the new 43 concessions, whatever concessions were granted after Le Valda was passed. Audit should happen to those concessions, and at the end of the audit they can even revoke the concessions, nullify the concession. So this was what was mentioned in Law 2564. So this was a situation, and many such audits happen. So I think Law 2564 was passed in December 2003, where a few months later, by February 2004, many audits were conducted, and in March 2004, one audit was conducted by Environmental Directorate of Ministry of Sustainable Development, and this audit, environmental audit, was done after conducting an on-site inspection of 4 companies, and these 4 companies were NMM, Non-Metallic Company, Minerals Company, and then there were other company, Kopla, and there was Techno Quiescenta, and there was Socomin. So there were 4 companies where the environmental audit was conducted, on-site inspection was conducted, and then the result of this audit was they found that these companies were not did not follow certain requirements mentioned under the environmental law and the regulations enacted under the environmental law. So that was a result. This happened in March 2004. Then by June, some sort of rectification measures, something happened, and this was an environmental license was granted to NMM with regard to the concession, one particular concession, Quo Vintas. With regard to that concession, environmental license were granted when on 9th June 2004, right? Few days after, 17th June 2004, the Ministry of Sustainable Development enacted an order suspending all activities in this particular concession because the granting of environmental license triggered a lot of protest against against the fact that license was granted. There was a call for war till death, there were rail blocks, there were road blocks, and many other protests that had happened. So because of this, only few days later, the Ministry of Sustainable Development suspended all activities with regard to that particular concession for which the environmental license were granted. So 9th June, we see that the license was granted, it triggered protest, and few days later, 17th June, the ministry itself suspends all activities. Then few days after, in June 2004 itself, the president passes a decree revoking the concession granted. So the concessions granted were revoked due to a presidential decree, and on the same day the president also passes another decree wherein the president suspends all export activity, export activities with regard to ulixide or products derived from ulixide. So these 2 decrees were passed on the same day, but the first decree is very significant because it revoked the concessions. Now this is the thing, after the presidential decree, NMM and Quiberex, what they do is they also hand over 11 concessions back to the prefect of Potosi. So those formalities were done. So then there was an interministerial meeting that happens, 4 ministries sort of participated in the meeting. So that was Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Worship, then Ministry of Sustainable Development, then Ministry of Economic Development, then a National Mining Technical Service. So all these 4 ministries participated, and then they were discussing. So then a memo was prepared. So this memo became a very crucial piece of evidence in this arbitration, which we will refer to as 2004 inter-ministerial memo, right? So in 2004 inter-ministerial memo, what had happened was we could see that the ministerial meeting, in that ministerial meeting they discussed about what are the situation that would arise because they have revoked the concession. One, they were expecting that there's a possibility that there could be an amicable settlement between Borex and the Bolivian government in case if Borex invoke Bolivia Chile BIT. But if there's an amicable settlement, then that would trigger the political unrest, and there could be social and regional conflicts. So that was something that they envisaged. That is one possible scenario. Secondly, they were looking at whether Bolivia can sort of defend itself in an investment arbitration. And the interministerial memo notes that since the revocation of the concession is something is not permitted under the mining code, so they were sort of thinking that it may not be successfully able to defend that position. So that was in the context of the second scenario. So ultimately, the memo concludes that the best alternative for Bolivia is to sort of look at, prove any sort of irregularities in the granting of the original mining concession. Only then it can defend itself. So this is something that is recorded in the interministerial memo. Meanwhile, Borex sends, files an ICSID arbitration case, and the notice is sent and all of that. So then there is a preliminary hearing, and in the preliminary hearing, Bolivia was contending that Borex, Moscoso, FOSC and all of them have been fabricating evidence in order to get access to ICSID arbitration. So then the tribunal had to pass a jurisdictional award, talking about whether it has jurisdiction to hear the claim. So in that clearly the tribunal decided that okay, so there may be some documentary discrepancies, but otherwise the claimant's facts are well stated and well documented. So it does not give a rise to the threshold that it amounts to fraudulent practice or they have fabricated certain evidence. So basically the tribunal rejected Bolivia's contention that there was some fabrication and all of that. And in that preliminary order, so some cases were also filed against Moscoso and FOSC. So the claimants were asking that there are certain criminal cases being filed against Moscoso and FOSC, and this will sort of aggravate the existing dispute. And then the claimants requested the tribunal to ask Bolivia not to suspend all the criminal cases and all of that. So then that is something that the claimant has. Tribunal also agreed and directed the Bolivia to sort of suspend those criminal cases filed against Moscoso and FOSC. So this was a situation as it is. Now what happened was Bolivia called for a coordination meeting in the Bolivian consulate that was there in Chile. FOSC and his legal counsel went there to attend, but there apparently, as per the claimants, FOSC and his legal counsel were ambushed with regard to taking some evidence for the criminal case, and then subsequently Bolivia asked Interpol to issue a red notice against FOSC. So all of these were happening. So this all happened after the preliminary order was passed by the tribunal asking Bolivia not to suspend the criminal cases against the claimants, all of this. So this is what was happening, and Bolivia has been asking Interpol to issue red notice against FOSC. In that context, now the matter proceeds to the merit stage. So in the merit stage, how did the tribunal what are the issues that the tribunal looked at and how did it decide those issues is something that we will see in the next video. In this video, I hope you are clear with the factual circumstances surrounding the case and how Borex invested in Bolivia and what was the investment and what happened to the investment. Initially, mining concessions were granted and the law that allowed for the mining concessions to be granted itself was abrogated, and then later on the presidential decree in June 2004 sort of revoked all concessions. So this is the procedural aspects, the chronology of the events that happened with regard to Quiberex investment. In the next video, we will look at the merits claim. Thank you.